gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome to a new edition of Political Smackdown. Betsy, we're glad to have you back this week. It means we've got our regular crew, so we'll just jump right in and get started talking about a few things. First, we're going to talk about something going on in our county seat. This past city council meeting, the city of Shelby has received and has started the process of purchasing the old Webley on South Washington Street, which was originally, well, not originally, but at one time the home of Governor Omax Gardner, and it's in a state of disrepair. They got a specific grant for this purpose of about $3.9 million to purchase and renovate this. But another thing that's been talked about for years, going even back to the time that I served back now, what seems like a long time ago, the old Hotel Charles, which runs down the West Warren Street side of what was originally First National Bank, now Bank OZK owns it. The city is purchasing that for $850,000 from Bank of OZK and has the hope or the plan to sell it to a private developer and eventually put it back on the tax books as a boutique hotel in Uptown Shelby. And if you're not aware, there is no hotel in Uptown Shelby, so this would be a first in decades since Hotel Charles closed. So apparently the city will use funds and pay cash for this $850,000 from, of all places, Wes, from its electric fund. So what are your thoughts about these developments, Wes? Get us started.
Well, first, it's my understanding that Webley was actually owned by Governor Huey as well, and I've been told it's the only residence in the country that's been privately held by two different governors, so very significant historically, and that's my understanding. But, you know, I generally support the concept, Mike, for preservation and restoration of these significant buildings of the past, and Cleveland County has such a significant history, but I would prefer a private investment. One, you have to wonder why the city has $850,000 to spend as an investment.
Now, this is on the Hotel Charles
On the
property.
Charles,
Not
right. You know, my house is 96 years old, and I know of several houses right now under restoration that are of similar age, all private investments. I know for a fact a developer was looking to purchase Webley, but of course backed out once this state grant came about. He had a plan for it. The city has none, but I'm glad Webley's being saved. I wonder if this is the best use of our tax dollars. Of course, Webley state money, Hotel Charles city money, but again, I fully support the restoration of these historic buildings and realize the positive effect that a historic boutique hotel could have on Uptown. I just wonder if this is the taxpayer's role. Wish both well, support the intent, and support the concept in general.
Well, Andy, we've talked about Webley a little before, but now apparently the grant has come through. The city's in the process of purchasing it. Will $3.9 million bring it back?
It's in rough shape, Mike. I've been by, and I've got experience with this. I mean, me and my mom and dad, we bought Judge E.Y. Webb's old house right beside Webley, and I can tell you, there's a never-ending list of things that need to be done.
No matter what you do, they're still kind of airy and have pretty high utility bills.
Yes, they do. And you might as well get ready. You're going to be painting outside every year. I mean, we would take one side every year and paint.
And I'm sure that since Senator Alexander was the source of making this happen for the state and getting it approved by the legislature, it'll have to be saved to the historic preservation principles because of what it is.
Yeah.
And that is even more expensive than just saving it.
And I mean, you go past it, and in the back, the roof has fell in. There is mold all through the back of it. You can't even safely walk in it. The last time I was in it, gosh, it was a little over 10 years ago. The ceiling, the wall was separating from the floor. I mean, it was that much back in the day. I mean, it's just a tremendous amount of work's going to have to be done. And until you get really into it, Mike, you really are not going to have a price tag on it because it just keeps shifting. I mean, there is a lot of history, as Wes has said. There is a tremendous. I think it boils down to is what is that history worth to the taxpayers? And that's what it really boils down to. And what is going to be the use of this with the taxpayer money involved in it? That's going to be the real tell of tape on it.
Well, you're no longer paying city electric bills, but what do you think about the fact that the city has $850,000 surplus enough in the electric fund to keep the fund balance the state wants them to keep and buy a piece of property with electric money?
Well, I'll answer a question with a question. Why do they not use that for backyard trash pickup? and why don't they use that for once a month bulk pickup? That is what I'd like to know. But I don't own one piece of ground anywhere in the lovely confines of Shelby, and I just don't care anymore.
Well, Andy Westmoreland now. He's going to have a dog in that fight.
Boy, that's a compliment for Andy, isn't it?
So Betsy, what are your thoughts on these two purchases by the city, one with state money and one with their own electric fund money?
Well, I remember before I came to do my student teaching at Shelby High School, and my brother was playing football for Garden Webb, and I found out how wonderful Cleveland County is. You actually have seasons for spring and for fall, and then I married someone from the county, and so it's been my home for many, many, many years. I won't say how many, but Webley has been, when I first came, it wasn't in a very good state. And then I was so pleased when Omax III and his wife brought it back and restored it. And, you know, it was, and remember Andy, that Terry Sanford came when he was running for president. And we had a big gathering there at Webley. And Omax IV was a student of Carolyn McWhorter, and she and I were together. And he took us on a tour of the whole house. And the ties that Webley has to the Shelby dynasty, and to President Truman coming to Omax Gardner's funeral and walking up the stairs and into Miss Faye's there getting dressed. And, you know, most women would have been said, oh, no. And said, well, welcome to Shelby, Mr. President. And that goes down in Democratic history. So I am pleased and thankful that Senator Alexander did come forth with this money, because I want to see it restored and become a museum, something that for that people can go through and be proud of. And I think that it's great that they're trying to bring a hotel, and if they can get private investors, that's super, to downtown Shelby. I think that both things are a big positive.
Well, it would be a positive to have a successful boutique hotel in uptown Shelby. I don't think there's any question about that. The big issue will be whether they can get another piece of property fairly close by, probably, to get some convenient parking. That's always a challenge with uptown. You can park.
Absolutely.
That's
Parking's
true.
critical.
You can
for
park.
that.
You can park somewhere uptown, but people don't want to have to go 3 blocks away from the hotel they're at. So
That's true.
that's going to be a one, and that has been an issue. I just think it's interesting that the electric fund has enough fund balance to do that, still maintain enough fund balance to keep the state happy. It makes me ask a question, Andy. Are my electric rates too high in Shelby?
Probably.
And I think Mayor Stan Anthony's doing a good job managing the city government.
Well, he obviously is, but it still begs the question, is this the use of tax money? Little old lady down the street from me that's struggling to stay in her house, have food on the table, should she be investing in a potential development? We don't know that this is going to come through. We're hopeful it is. But is that the proper use of money that's extorted from people?
Well, it is an interesting question, and they are going to happen, and we'll move on to another subject. We have another April surprise in North Carolina, but it's gotten to be rather regular, Andy, since your former opponents in the legislature sometimes have taken charge. They've had one revenue surplus after another, right along with continuing to give raises and keep up the best they could with everything else and get through COVID with all that federal money. But this year, out of their $30 billion plus budget, looks like they're going to collect $1.4 billion, according to April collections, by the end of June, than they budgeted for. So what happens with the extra money? Governor Cooper has a plan. They have plans. What say you, Andy, about the fact that they actually are having surplus after surplus?
And that's just the way that works, Mike. It's a shell game that goes on every year. I mean, everybody knows it's coming. It's cooked into the book, so to speak, because everybody wants to look good in April. They just do. Very few years do you see, and it's usually about the same amount. It historically is. Now, sometimes it's not, because you'll have a downturn and it will drop. I mean, it does. I mean, it happens. But generally, you go all the way back into the 90s and into the 80s, and it's generally about the same amount. And, you know, they line up around that building trying to figure out how to spend the money.
I bet former Governor Perdue wishes it had been that way in her 4 years.
Yes,
Yes,
she
she
does.
does.
I mean, it does. But like I said, that sometimes you do have downturns. I mean, but generally, that in the economy that's generally been, that's usually
Well,
what
this is
happens.
about 5% of a $30 billion budget, not
Yeah.
quite, but, and it's probably really more than that in a way, because you know what? There's some other stuff that's cooked in over here that they knew wasn't going to be spent that they budgeted.
And there's always some unspent reserve money. I mean, usually it is from, you know, jobs that are vacant and that sort of thing.
So Betsy, what in the world are they going to do with this $1.4 billion?
I hope they give teacher raises. I mean, we need to look at public education and the amount of teachers and the teacher shortage. And they gave them a 3.5% pay raise last year, and they need more. I mean, we've got like I said, a teacher shortage. They did nothing to relieve that. And I hope they'll give retirees a raise. I mean, and the inflation it's ate up the pay raise that teachers got. But I knew, and of course, I think that adding $300 million to the opportunity scholarships, is that what y'all talked about last week? I think that they could use that money better ways than try to erase some holes in the budget that has gotten overlooked, like teacher raises.
Wes, are you surprised Betsy would give teachers bigger raises? I'm just shocked, Betsy.
No, and the opportunity scholarships is its own thing. The fact is that didn't create a hole in the budget anywhere, but budget goes up. Andy, when I was there 12 years ago, we had a $20 billion budget, rough numbers. Today it's $30 billion. Education spending keeps going up. Teachers keep getting raises, which is a good thing. I think it's deserved. It's certainly in contrast to the Democrats freezing teacher pay before the Republicans took over. But Mike, the Republicans have reduced taxes every year since we've been in control, and revenue continues to rise. In economics, this is called the Laffer curve. Laffer was an economist with Reagan that established the principle that has been proven over and over again. You allow people control of their own money, economy grows, thus government revenue grows. It's not that we're spending enough, we're taxing too much. We've got to continue to cut taxes to have this continued growth and let the people enjoy, as the state constitution says, the fruits of their own labor. We can determine spending better than a government can.
Andy, Governor Cooper's proposal would raise spending in the second year by 16%, which he knows is unrealistic and nobody's going to do. So why do you put it out there, just for pure politics?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's all that is, and that's all it is.
Pure
I mean,
politics.
It is, and you know, and I wish West needs to look. I mean, taxes have, but what about fees and other stuff? Those have not really dropped. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, income taxes have dropped. They have. But you look at, there's other ways to raise money that the General Assembly is getting it from.
And fees are fine. We should pay for what we get, and those who don't use it don't have to pay the fee. But to
Speak
extort-
for yourself. When the Democrats were in control, it cost me $85 or $55 to evict somebody, and now it cost me $150.
If you ask me, it doesn't matter if it comes out of my pocket, it's still a tax to me.
But it's not, to me, it's not extorted. You're at least using the
You're paying
system,
for your
therefore
own
you're paying for
service.
the system.
I get what Wes is saying.
still
It's-
costs me,
It's a
though.
serious matter, but, you know, for some folks like me who hire a lot of folks, they have broadened the sales tax base so that I'm not sure my income tax cuts quite offset my consumption tax increases.
That's my point.
And
With an idea of your income, I'm sure it does, Mike.
Oh, man.
Yeah, dream on, Alice, you're in Wonderland.
What do you, guys, what do you think is going to happen whenever we get down to where the corporate tax is zero? Do
Oh,
you
we're
really-
going to
We're
explode.
gonna have
as a
business
nation.
exploding
It's gonna
like
be
you have
wonderful.
never
not,
seen.
Not like Nebraska or Kansas?
Be more like Texas and Florida.
Yes,
who
we'll
Do
see.
not have an income tax for individuals or corporate. Well, folks, we've consumed half of the show. When we come back, we're going to talk about the new Title IX regulations of President Joe Biden.
Hi, I'm Nikki Bliss Carroll, your host for Cleveland Connections, the show that explores what's happening at Cleveland Community College. Join us as we sit down with members of faculty and staff to discuss programs of study, upcoming events, and other exciting campus news. We'll have a new show for you each month on C19 TV, or you can stream us online at c19.tv. Tune in and connect with Cleveland Community College on Cleveland Connections.
Welcome back to the second half of Political Smackdown. On April 19th, Joe Biden and his Department of Education basically have erased 50 years of Title IX protecting women in sports. Even elementary schools under these new regulations cannot keep a biological boy from going into a girl's bathroom. While they sort of punted it on men playing in women's sports, biological men playing in women's sports, the just clear reading of it indicates that that is also going to be an issue. How bad is this for women's sports? How bad is it for little girls in school? Betsy, what's your take on Biden and his Department of Education rolling back Title IX?
Well, that's a very broad concept when you say roll back Title IX. What the administration did was issued new rules cementing the protection for LGBTQ students under federal law and reversing a number of Trump-era policies that dictated how schools should respond to cases of alleged sexual misconduct in K-12 schools and college campuses. This new ruling, which would take effect on August 1st, broadened the scope of Title IX, the 72 law prohibiting sex discrimination in educational programs that receive federal funding. They extend the law's reach to prohibit discrimination and harassment based on sexual orientation and gender identity, and widen the range of sexual harassment complaints that schools will be responsible for investigating. Now, I get to the area about the school sports. How many students is that going to involve, Mike? Not very many. And of course, that's the one thing that you would look at rather than look how
Well, it's going to
when you
involve every
extend-
little girl in elementary school because they can't keep a little boy out of it.
If you have a little boy there at that school, how many across the nation do you have that
We're
will
having an
involve?
increasing number every year.
Well, I just think that sometimes you pick and choose, and of course, what he did about protecting LGBTQ students was something that he had promised in his campaign, and he fulfilled
So
it.
he's protecting the few at the expense of almost everyone. Wes, what's
Well-
your take?
You know, modern national Democrats just don't live in reality. Whether it's war as we exit Afghanistan, whether it's protecting the border, or whether it's how you identify gender, we can dig up bones from 1,000 years ago and determine a gender. Has nothing to do with that individual's wishes or make-believe world. This year, Caitlin Clark, a basketball player, has taken the world by storm, and rightly so. She's a generational athlete. And this administration wants to cut her off at the knees by having her compete against men and shower with men for the sake of pandering to a very small minority who do not live in reality. 2 states have given orders to ignore this mandate until the courts have the opportunity to review. North Carolina should do so as well, and Betsy, it doesn't matter if it's 1 or if it's 100,000. Gender is a real thing, should be respected. Title IX was fought for decades by women to have the opportunity to compete, to earn, to be who they are. And this is just absolutely wrong.
Andy, straighten them out.
Andy, in Genesis 1, we learned that God created man in his own image. Male and female created he them.
I feel a migraine coming.
If you, let's just be blunt. If a little boy has a male organ, he's a little boy regardless of what he thinks he is, and he shouldn't be in a girl's bathroom, should he?
No. Here's the thing. Young people, boys and girls, when they're coming along, they both have problems with body image. I don't care what you say. They all do. We all came through it. You feel ill at ease about yourself. Even if you're in a locker full of young boys or young girls, it doesn't matter. You feel ill at ease. And I think if you put somebody of the opposite sex in there, it's got to make it worse. It's just got to. I don't see how it couldn't. If somebody feels like they feel that they are of other sex, all right, put them in a separate restroom. If that's what if that's what needs to happen. I just don't think you need to make things worse on a 14-year-old boy or girl and inflict that on them because this other person has a concern or issue. I think there's a way that you can come to some solution where everybody's not thrown into total chaos. And that is the way I feel about that.
You know,
And-
I think what's going to happen here is the Democrats have now hit on something that will be as big or bigger than abortion to a lot of parents with school-age children if this stands the test of the courts.
And most of the schools that have these children do provide a separate bathroom for them to use. They don't
Then
throw
why-
them
then-
in.
But
then
that's
why
not going to be
overturn it?
allowable under Biden's
Well,
regs, Betsy.
All right, Wes, how's
We'll
that for a
see.
Democrat solution?
Well, I like what you said. I
Yes,
agree with it.
yes.
But I go back to living in reality.
Well, I think that's about as
And
reality as it gets.
It is, but the National Democrats don't agree with that. That's not the direction they're going. And that's the problem. And they don't live in reality over Israel and Gaza. They don't live in reality over the Afghanistan withdrawal.
Oh, well,
They don't live
how
in
many years
reality
ago
over
was that?
economics. This has just become
Wes,
how the
Wes,
Democrats
Wes.
Well,
Here we go.
we're going to go to the lightning round. We may be a minute early on going lightning round, but I don't think we can get another subject in. Wes, I know you've got a good one. Go ahead.
Well, I've got 3 quick points. 2, actually, Betsy, will compliment Democrats, which is painful. First, I want to recognize and thank the Cleveland County Democrat Party for picking up the trash on West Marion Street in Shelby. particularly coming up the hill from Ingalls. They picked up this week. It looks much better. The Democrats are uniquely qualified for this, and as a resident of West Marion,
He
I'm
just
most
can't
grateful.
get it all out, can he?
I also want to state for the first time that I agree with President Biden when he recently in Florida said, "I don't know why we're surprised by Trump. How many times does he have to prove we can't be trusted?" And finally, with a nod to Walter Cronkite, today is the 203rd day for Americans held in captivity by Hamas.
Andy,
Well, on that note, I had two different things. One,
did you pick up trash in West Marion?
I didn't know they were even doing this. I mean, anyway, I had two different things, and neither one of them has anything to do with Taylor Swift or pornography, Wes. So today's your day. So I'm going to lead with the positive one. This past week, Voyager 1, which has been flying out since 1976, the deepest reaching satellite we have ever taken, we have made contact with it once again. Now, this satellite has been out there since 1976. Give you context, in 1976, when this was launched, Jimmy Carter was in his second year. We were just reacting to Elvis Presley's death. Star Wars was the #1 film in the box office. 46 years this craft has been going out, and its twin, Voyager 2, has never missed a beat the whole time. Talk about American engineering, and it's still going and broadcast. It takes 22 and a half hours to receive one message back and to send it back, and it's still going strong. Is that not a wonderful thing that's going on?
Busy?
All right, I want to talk about what's going on. It's very exciting down at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. Today they opened this fossil exhibit called the Dueling Dinosaurs. It's an incredible fossil that contains the skeleton of two extinct animals, a Tyrannosaurus and a Triceratops. And they're entangled, their bones are like they were fighting. And what happened to them? And it's a 67 million year old mystery just waiting to be solved. And the exhibit is going to be open to the public to come in, and the scientists, the paleontologists are going to be there working and ascertaining these bones and so forth. They were found in Montana on a ranch back in about 2006, and for those of us that are interested in dinosaurs, whether we rode them to school or not, then I hope we'll go to Raleigh and we'll see the dinosaur exhibit.
Well, here's another thing that happened in Shelby at their last city council meeting. Shelby has passed an ordinance which will allow open carry of alcohol in specified containers in the 20 blocks of what's called the Municipal Tax District, or Uptown Shelby. As you know, they some years ago passed, somewhat controversially, allowing sidewalk consumption of alcohol in front of restaurants. But this will allow people to walk from business to business in the district. About 40 other cities have already done this since statutes made it possible. It is subject to the ABC Commission approving it before it can take place. And it will not apply to the portion of the rail trail. I guess you don't need to be drunk on the rail trail, Andy.
I would agree.
But it's interesting, and Shelby's come a long way in its attitude on that since I got in so much trouble for making the motion to let people vote on liquor by the drink in 1993. Been a lot of progress there as far as open-mindedness. Well, folks, that gets our show done for this week. We hope you'll come back and join us again next week for Political Smackdown.